have we seen any painting of a king dressed like Gandhiji? How is it that at a time when there was no electricity, no fan, no air conditioning, the kings were able to kind of dress themselves up like that? Many of us believe that the 5 years of education has kind of made us equipped to build or design. At one level, it is true.
Good evening, sir. You are visiting Kerala as a jury member of Vanitha Architectural Awards. What's your first impression when it stand out to you about Kerala architecture and lifestyle?
Thank you for the invitation to the jury of Vanitha Architecture Award. As I've seen, I've been visiting Kerala from the last 40 years now. I think the first time was somewhere around 1980s. And so we've seen Kerala also transform over these years. What has been very fascinating and incredible about Kerala is that there has been, right from, I would say, ancient times, a sense of identity of its architecture. You know, whether you look at Padmanabhapuram, whether we look at the wood architecture, we look at, and later on the cities that developed like Kochi, Trivandrum, the villages in the backwater. So there has been a very deep building craft tradition in Kerala, and that building craft tradition has been able to absorb, because of international trade also, we know for 2005 Muzre's trade, 2500 years, has been able to absorb and synthesize, synergize the very, very rooted local with a very broad-minded international. And I think this is not new. In Kerala, you can almost feel globalization, if we are using that word, actually happened 2000 years ago. And so they really knew how to have a conversation between cultures, at the same time remain rooted within the land. And I think that is what has created this architecture of sloping roofs, the kind of jalis you get, the screens you get, the courtyards, the materials, terracotta material, the kind of wood. So I think all that goes to shape the spatial imagination of the state.
Okay, so you're talking about globalization and its history and all, like, no? So when we look at your practice, artist roots, so in today's globalized design culture, what does being rooted truly mean for an architect?
That is a very complex, paradoxical question. I think each, whether it's an architect or most of the building craft traditions, each searches for that rootedness in their own way. And if we really look at it, it may appear simple. Rootedness comes from observation. Rootedness comes from respect of everything, people, materials, climate. Rootedness also comes from introspecting about what is really the need. And as a personal philosophy, I find that if we build a little less than what we want, always little less than what we want, we rediscover rootedness in a new way. Because then what happens, when we build less, we are actually our own experiences of how to live in a space get awakened. But if you, I'm not saying from right or wrong, or we're really looking at rootedness. So there is an old saying, in fact last week we were discussing in Mumbai also, that does rootedness mean that I build a villa in a site, or the nomad who is going with a camel in Rajasthan, he's also rooted. So at what level are we rooted? Are we rooted at the level of self? Are we rooted at the level of neighborhood? Are we rooted at, so it's really, there's not a clear like an answer or a solution to it, but it is really a discovery. It is a each time you find new things, you're learning. So it's the constant curiosity to understand, find, respect, observe, I would say it becomes the basis of rootedness.
So we are talking about actually individuals looking at probably context. Now coming to these community level exercises that you are having from your past experience of Nagapattanam or actually refugee habitat and all, what were the important lessons actually as an architect when you directly went into, because those days actually probably you might have gone to those locations without prior experience, no? So what was a bigger lesson actually that you could get from such kind of exercises?
So what generally happens is that many of us believe that the 5 years of education has kind of made us equipped to build or design. At one level it is true, but one finds that many a times, most of the time, if one was at a site, I was working with Professor Doshi, then I was working with Calatrava also at some time. I was working with architect Laurie Baker. Now if one went to their site, one would find that while they have a sense of very deep groundedness, rootedness about what they want, one amazing quality that all of them had, which is not discussed much in the educational system, is that they were working in a collaborative way. So there would have been an 80-year-old carpenter who knows carpentry for generations, 500 years. There will be someone who's doing a red oxide floor. There was another. So what happens is that each of them is actually bringing in 300, 700 years of tradition when they come. So we begin to realize that an architect now has to reimagine their role and begin to understand that many of our co-collaborators carry a lot of indigenous building practices. So if we step back a little and then start looking at that, I think this act of construction, act of imagination becomes collaborative. Taking that to the next step, when Nagapattinam happened, these were disasters which we had never seen before at that time, and we were invited to look at one time build 15,000 homes, sometimes 100,000 homes. When the war refugee happened, when the Sri Lankan refugees were coming, again there were like 100,000 homes. And many times the challenge is these homes need to be built within 1 month or 2 months, because they're the refugees you cannot say I will design and I'll come back in 4 years. That luxury is not there. At the same time, because you're building in such a short time, as an architect you cannot compromise in that dilemma of that large scale was required, and the fact that you can't compromise on quality of life. What we thought at that time was just sit with them on that first day. The army was there, the navy was there, all of them were there. We were sitting with them and just asking them, what is your skill in building? And then you find 80% of them have some very unique building skills. They already know. And so what we thought is, suppose we meet them collaborative in the building skill, and we start having a conversation on what kind of habitat we all need, and bring in those kind of. So we even actually traveled to Auroville with the group in trucks, just so they see. We traveled to Bakers, they came in that first 5-7 days, the main group came. We traveled and saw, and it was like a studio travel. We were traveling, they were seeing, and they felt, yes, we can build this. And at that time we met Mr. Baker, and architect Baker said, why doesn't our group also can come and help them to learn rat trap bond? So they came. The architect then became a catalyst. One knows there's a responsibility on what kind of environment is emerging, but it becomes, in music you may have, closest I can think of is like a jazz symphony or in a music. So where one understands the roles, understands different strengths, and then so then what happens is the sense of belonging of the community. So if one goes there, so I said the project is successful the day the community tells the architect, now you can leave. So instead of making communities dependent because of a disaster, how do we make it self-reliant? And if that is done through that process, then they understand that all they need is support and a conversation. They're able to build these large. So I heard that the buildings that were done rebuilding in these areas, many of them there's a study done by SOM New York, that in India actually this community development we did is faster than done in Japan or France now. And that's because if one uses a normal conventional process to build 100,000 homes, whereas each one is building their own home, you can address it well with quality.
So it's basically community participatory way of looking at projects of that order.
Yeah.
So again, coming to this affordable housing now. So that is the area where actually we at this point of time need to discuss. So it's mainly about the scale, the quality, all those things is what actually will come directly to mind when it comes to affordability. But as architects, actually we need to think beyond it. So from your experience, can you help us understand actually how you see actually housing, or how can we make actually housing more affordable for the general public?
Again, in today's context, where land values have become very high, that has become an extremely challenging to look at affordable housing. However, we still need to look at affordable housing. What we generally look at is that if we really look at a home, we're not saying go to the simplicity of Gandhi Ashram. That's one of the simplest homes. Or Golconda Ashram in Pondicherry. So there are many examples that we find within India. Different climatic conditions. Let's say we went to Rajasthan, or even in Kerala, we go and see this hut. We'll see that even though it was made in mud and made in thatch, one is not saying everyone lives in mud and thatch, but even if one sees that, we found that it can be done with a lot of grace, with a lot of inner happiness of living. So those are examples that show us that even if it was affordable, it doesn't have to be of poor quality. Now that's the challenge we have kind of been addressing. And in the self-build, what also happens is that when there is a self-build, because the family is very dedicated to build their own home, we find that spirit emerges. But we are not sure, I'm not saying it's not possible, but we are not sure whether if contractor driven doing 20,000 houses, which are very standardized.
So basically industrial driven projects are not the answer for affordable housing.
I won't be so categorical. I'm saying this is the opportunity for young architects to really discover how can we blend the strength of industrial housing with the spirit of this self-build.
Probably merging the possibilities of both.
This is the challenge in front of, let's say, the young architects, academies, because then really we have something which is climate friendly. We have something which is respecting the way we live. It is respecting our privacy, respecting the context. So at the same time, we are able to scale it. One example I generally give. Very few realize that cities like Jaipur or even the older towns in Kerala, Srirangam, all these towns were built in very short period of time. Now if the same has to be built today, we may say it takes 25-50 years. How did they build it in such a short period of time, and still we travel there and say these are magnificent, magical cities? Now that is because there was a inner process of the architects at that time, those who were building, the building craftsmen, where each element was already thought through, almost like today there's a game called Lego, kit of parts. They thought through with such finesse, such beauty, that even if it was done fast, we have magical cities standing in very short time. So I think this is the real challenge for young architects now. How can they really synergy, bring a synergy of that with this kind of scale? It has been done in the past. It is not something like a new idea.
So like your experience in urban policy and actually now your association with UN, we were discussing earlier also. See, how can we translate all these bigger understanding to young practices or generally practices? Can you give some idea about the bigger understandings on one side and getting into practice and the translation. In translation, many a time we lose the essence of what we learn, especially when it comes to youngsters, because our practice only these things get matured and things happen ultimately on ground. No, again, convincing is also a bigger that degree of conversion, no, from that. So that in that aspect, can you help us understand, or from your experience, can you explain?
Sure. See, at one level, I think today people or even nations
Yeah.
have realized that there is a planetary change
Yeah.
of climate. So there is a climate change
Yeah.
which is quite adverse.
Yeah.
It is increasing the kind of disasters, and it is also challenging resources. It is challenging building material.
Yeah.
So that I think in agreement that this is what is the challenge in front of us. So the UN has formulated the SDG goals, what
Yeah.
they called. It's all available for, and that each of the goal is kind of reflecting one aspect. It could reflect water, it could reflect gender, it could reflect building materials. So there are these goals. At some level, it has got percolated into the education system. What probably is of deep need right now is how does the education system begin a deeper dialogue with the practice and profession? How does the practice and profession synergize and converse with the academia? I'm not saying nobody is doing, there are quite a few who are doing it already, but if that can grow and we realize that that is the conversation required, because of all in even in, let's say when looking at for young architects or for education system, two most reliable teachers that I can teach us, history and travel, are really the two teachers for architecture. So if we are able to travel, we see examples, let's say someone went and stood in Padmanapuram, and when you stand you realize the temperature outside is so hot or it's heavy rain.
Yeah.
And just that little 2 feet, 3 feet walking into the pavilion, and we will find that we have comfort. So the conversation becomes, have we seen any painting of a king dressed like Gandhiji? Not that they should, but I'm saying, have we seen? How is it that at a time when there was no electricity, no fan, no air conditioning, the kings were able, kings, queens, royalty were able to kind of dress themselves up like that? Now that is not it's not more a reflection on what they are wearing, but I would say it's really a reflection of how architects understood response to nature and passive design of elements of architecture, by which, if we go back, we'll find energy consumption was very low.
Yeah.
The water usage was very frugal, and so what we are calling today as sustainable and we are giving a rating system was a certain way of life. Even in Indian cities, they've invited me to Barcelona, and the reason for inviting was so simple that in many of these cities they have forgotten how to walk. So now when we're moving to walking city, to make it more, we realize that yes, walking was a tradition. We've forgotten. And whether it was cycling, I think the Indian cities already cycling for many years. How do we relook at this in the context of climate change? We don't need to reinvent. These are already part of our way of life. We are walking. Question is, how do we design that walking is respected? So what kind of shading is there in the urban spaces? What kind of pavement is there? Even an elderly walking should walk safely.
Yeah.
If a young child is walking to school, they must walk safely. So actually it is a very simple, we don't need, we know how to make it safe. We know how elderly should be safe. We know what kind of, can water percolate into the soil? So we have a regeneration. So I think at one level it is very, very simple. It almost feels like common sense.
Okay.
At another level, it does need observation. It does need learning. So I think if we combine these two,
Yeah.
there is a percolation of the UN SDG to the last street or home. at various levels through academia and through practice.
Oh. So when it comes to Kerala context now, we were also facing a lot of disasters in the last couple of years, especially the flood that we had faced in 2018, 17, 18 and all was really bad. So at that point actually, from your perspective, what architectural planning shift that we are urgently in need of? Because you are quite familiar about Kerala as well. That's why I wish actually I could hear from you in that perspective.
I'll see actually the Indian Institute of Architects in Kerala has been very forward thinking, and within India also I think the architects in Kerala have contributed to these understandings quite deeply. So when the floods had come, they had invited us. We came down here and we traveled to various towns, villages which had flooded. We traveled into the hills and the ghats. We begin to realize that certain ancient principles of responding to topography, responding to nature, responding to densities, these were there. But under the pressures of maybe land or under the pressures of speculation or under various other pressures, a sudden haste of building began. And when haste of building begins, what one element that always keeps its memory is water and also cattle. Now let's say we discussed with a person building a factory on the outskirts suddenly, it's in wilderness, agricultural land. And many of my friends I asked them, what is your experience? And they were saying that when they were building, if it rained, then, and if they had not really respected the site, the rainwater will flow through the factory and go. Because it has its memory. We may say it's because of slope, topography, but it's a larger regional context. So there is a surface flow. Now if I'm only looking, or if we look only at our plot and don't look at that memory of the water, then we say, why is this landslide? Why did we flood? Why did, So that is one part. Similarly, if we watch actually cattle, when they go home, they don't need any guidance. They can go 5 kilometers on their own. They know the path they go. They're very self-reliant. Now what happens? Suddenly somebody is building a factory. And if one is standing in the evening, you will see that this factory is in the middle here. All the area around is free. Still the cattle will go through the factory and go because that was their path. They will not go around. So suddenly in the evening, the contractor will find 20 cattle walking through, and why? This was all open, they had made a path, they will go that way. Now that is where we need to recognize that every force or every element on this planet is having a memory. How do we respect with that memory really will minimize dramatically. So disaster is a reflection of disrespect to memory.
Disrespect to memory.
Disrespect to memory creates natural disaster, creates these kind of disasters. So the minute we realize that we have to work with that, because we've just now, I've written an essay, architect Stephen Hall had invited me to write an essay on uncertainty. And why is this uncertain? Now the same thing has got reflected in Hong Kong. We're doing a biennale on the same idea. On uncertainty. Why did it come? Now it has come because somewhere we as an architecture fraternity and maybe as society, we started giving more importance to land and forgot water. But if we now give equal or more importance to water and subdue our so much importance on land, I think the way we are going to build, the way we are going to design, the way we are going to live will change considerably. So that is the new area where I am working on. To look at memories of water, whether it is wetland, whether it is river, whether it is sea, and how these are really going to change the way we are looking at architecture.
So basically when it comes to jury, now we are in the context of a jury, so we are talking so many things actually. The last one which was exciting was that memory. So when it comes to evaluating projects, so are these priorities that you as a juror, when you look at evaluating projects?
While evaluating projects, these are These are definitely some of the. But I think another part of evaluating projects, if it is an academic or younger, I think the dedication and commitment to understand what the family or patron wanted, to understand the local, to understand what materials, how the construction process, that full immersion into it is a great attribute. Mistakes may happen. In one project, some mistake may happen. But those are inevitable. But if the focus remains on that dedication to understand, listen to the co-collaborators on the site, listen to the patron who's requesting that home, or I think that becomes a very good reference on how a project is emerging. So are we immersed in the project, or is that project being done from outside? I think that difference begins to, so it's not easy to draw evaluation criteria all the time.
Correct.
There are some which are quantitative, but some are qualitative, and some are even intangible.
Right.
So, but one has to balance in a way that even the others who are participating in something like this begin to share it and understand it. That they begin to see, that this is how we need to begin to relook at architecture. Also to remember that architecture is not static. Our lives are changing. And if our lives are changing, have we designed something that can change? Like let's say somebody is designing a home, simple thing. Somebody designed a home for a client. The family is telling the architect, I have a home and I have 2 children who are 3 years old, and now we are designing the home. Now will I design? Of course I have to design a home for 2 children 3 years old, but I must remember they will become 10 years. They will become 20 years. They may get married and come back here. So can we reimagine the possible futures of the home also? Not to go and make specifically futuristic home.
Correct.
But a home of possibility, home of flexibility, home of adaptability. And if we are able to do that, and if we look at a lot of the medieval and architecture, go to the Nalkot and those, they have that flexibility and adaptability. So it could really, at any life of the family, it looks as if it is in harmony. So that is the challenge to really now look at.
So when it comes to academics, you are part of bigger academic circle, so that equally we have hope as well as worry involved in current situations. So can you elaborate on that aspect of it, like the preparedness that we need to have in terms of preparing our next generation academics?
I will go back again to that earlier the discussion we had on rootedness, and then the other discussion we had on the home. There are 2 or 3 things which are happening in the academia, not only academia, in the larger society, which is beginning to shape the way we are doing things. And we find rapid change of technology is probably having an impact in the way we live and think. Is probably having an impact in the way we make our spaces now. And I think at some point in time, it's not to bring in everything and say we are prepared. I think preparedness again comes from a very mature, calm observation of what is on the table or what is there. Preparedness doesn't come on, so at one time I had, and it's there on YouTube now, few conversations with architects like Stephen Hall and Frank Gehry, and consciously brought this on the table to discuss on what is the role of technology in the rapid change of softwares, 3D printing. How do you handle this? With practices that are in the forefront of handling this. And it's on YouTube, so anyone can go and see. So they said preparedness comes from developing each one's inner observational power. It doesn't come from learning those 6 technologies or learning those, of course one learns,
Yeah.
but the focus remains on observational, focus remains on how to be creative in the mind, focus remains on how to respond to situations, focus remains on again traveling, seeing species, meeting people. That's how they, because they said even if a school didn't teach, that's on record, even if a school didn't teach any technology or any AutoCAD, nothing, but taught them this was the way things are constructed, and it's taught is not the right word. Expose them to that, and they are able to immerse in that. These practices said in 3 months, 4 months, the softwares we will guide and teach them. They don't need 5 years. But what we need from them is a curiosity to see what is the agency or what is that energy of architecture to make a better city. What is that energy of architecture to make a better life for somebody? Through architecture. We can do through other things. Yeah. If I'm doing a 5-year course in architecture, I need to know. Like for instance, let's say there's a discussion on Gandhi Ashram. It's a very old project, memorial designed by Charles Correa. They look like simple pavilions. But if one goes there, you see that it is a project where a very rich person, someone from the village, someone from the town, someone from maybe has come from Chicago, can all be simultaneously walking around without feeling hierarchy. Now, how can just simple pavilion do that to human behavior where you completely lose that idea of status and hierarchy? They're walking around. So, but imagine the same thing was done with some huge marble air condition. Then I think someone from the village may or may not enter that place. They will think, So I think architecture has that that kind of spatial imagination. How do we transcend that spatial imagination where we'll find this kind of mix can happen, diversity can happen, flexibility and adaptability.
So again, looking into your portfolio, being part of organizing many events, for example, the Jaipur Architecture Festival, which you are really part of. What are the big learnings actually when doing such kind of or being part of such kind of bigger forums?
I will come back to, for instance, let's say the Vanitha Veedu Architecture Awards. Let's look at this. So when architect Tony first called me and we were discussing this, he was discussing the format, the intent, how young architects come, how it, and then I was discussing that with very briefly, but more on Insta, with Sir David Edge, who was going to be here to give him an idea, of what this is and the kind of architects who have come here, been here. Now, what happens is that when several minds, come together, and these minds have been thinking, what can one do in society? What can one do for a home? How can I make a better home? How can I, they're simple questions, but the mind is working on that with experience on the site. Both are, and in communication with. So when that kind of energy comes together, it could be from different parts of Kerala. What we've been doing is from different parts of the world also coming together. What happens is that, so we started in Jaipur because actually it all happened accidentally. We didn't organize anything, it all accidental. Now when I look back and you're asking me, I realize it was exactly the same way as the Nagapattinam self-build. So we were catalysts. We wrote to a few friends. They said, no, we'll come to Jaipur. Someone said, okay, then let's come there. The theme also was like just discussed like that. And suddenly, so I said, when the government said they will fund it, we said, if you're funding in all this, that's fine. So they gave it. No rules were put on anybody. You just come. Auditorium, the door, nobody was there. The doors were all left open. So people were actually wondering, they're coming there, they've not seen all the auditorium door open. Do I have to, nothing, just walk in, walk out, anything was. So they said, I said maybe 800, let's have an auditorium of 800 people. And no WhatsApp, there was no, actually, no one was informed also. So the government said 800 doesn't come, we run every other program and maximum from 80 will come, sir. No need 800. I said, no, let's have, 800 will have. So they said, it's too big. I said, that auditorium is empty, so we'll just have it in that. So there's no expense that way. So they said, okay. 1,800 came.
Okay.
So then the government said 1,800 is coming. We insisted that the program has to be free. There's no, that it has to be free. But what it did is when architects began coming like this from various, then I wrote to the Pritzker jury and requested them, why don't you all come and inaugurate? And they had never received such an invitation. So Martha Thorn came and she inaugurated. Then I had gone and also met, and like this, very simple, nothing was done. One A4 sheet was there. We went and met Mr. Ratan Tata. We went and met, and with one A4 sheet and just intent. No giving any expectation what will happen, nothing, just intent. This is what we're intending, this is the pitch, that's all. And we will do it here. And it just grew. So it was like Professor Doshi came, then Reba came, then because Reba was coming, I decided let's invite all the, not all, but many of the kings. So King of Tanjore, the princess from Jaipur, Gaikwad. So they also came, because if you have a Royal Institute of British Architects, I said all those, very few know that many of these families, their great grandparents were architects registered with RIBA.
Okay.
Now nobody knows that. So those kind of research we were doing, and we found that okay, we can start another conversation. So it doesn't remain architects speaking to architects.
Okay.
Designers came, filmmakers came, then there were graphic designers came, and for the first time when they were all coming there, it was a little new for everyone, but I think it started growing. So
in that point, actually, I wish to hear a different perspective of conducting forums exclusively for architects and designers. But that point where actually you are bringing in others, people from other fraternities, or probably directly or indirectly connected with.
Yes.
So that makes sense, because actually the conversation will be taken to a different aspects, or probably different perspectives will come in, because we are seeing always through a lens of an architect or a designer, and people from other dimensions, other professions come and give us how they see actually the same situations, same problem. So probably when we have such kind of exercises, what is your take, like how we should plan probably in future, how well we can, or what could be the way we can make people participatory exercises in such kind of architectural conversation or design conversations that is happening in different part of the cities?
See, I feel the seeds are already there in the soil.
Yeah.
So one doesn't need to make it happen, and it is there. Now it is a question of how do we nurture the soil?
Yeah.
How do we ensure that these seeds begin to grow? Now, if we look at it, even tomorrow we can see.
Yeah.
I'm finding most of them who are coming or who have participated, each of them is already bringing a lot of thinking into what needs to be done for the city or what needs to be done. They all, and they're coming with a very optimistic energy.
Yeah.
Now what happens is generally the optimistic energy gets focused on an award. Now the possibility is here that after getting focused on the award, how can it develop a set of dialogues as well as practice, where now you're not coming into the award, but the award becomes the starting point for that.
Okay.
So otherwise what happens, we are imagining the award as some end, I've done
Yeah.
something, I got the award, I went away. And there is so much optimistic energy when everyone has come and then you find suddenly next 3 months or 4 months nothing is happening. But imagine now that we thought from this, there are 20 or 30 people start in a certain ask practices who say come. What do you think are the areas in which we can improve the city, or we can, then we will be surprised at the ideas that come. Then how those ideas have to be supported to manifest and bring into reality, I think can open completely new areas for citizens, for artists in a city. And Kochi has already become, that kind of, I was just there, the Biennale and came. So I think if this layers with that, there is really so much that can happen with this.
Okay, so do you, from your side, actually this should be some kind of starting point where we discuss some good architecture, good design, and from there it should get transcended to public through probably dialogues or exchange of whatnot.
Maybe
we
even
can
a
plan
project, someone may
even the publication that these Vanitha is doing could be also part of it. Like,
will become one of the, I would say, important vehicles.
Yeah.
It becomes a vehicle for advocacy.
Yeah, correct.
So tomorrow people must see that in that every second or there is a project thinking and what can happen. Slowly it won't become that, they will start preserving that magazine because it is having a program on what they can do in their practice. It is not only describing a project. It is keeping those kind of innovative programs which are possible, which have come contributed by young architects like this. Then it starts developing. But whenever I've come to Kerala, it's in the IA awards and all also happening with these awards. I think that process has already started in Kerala and started very well. So I won't try to suggest more than that, because I come here because I'm seeing the process is already started by the people who are here. So I won't suggest more. I come here more to engage with that energy, converse, and then you renew your own energy and inspiration, from that. But I think in Kerala, definitely it has already begun. Now it's a question of how is it shaped, what kind of possibilities are there, how it can happen, which is the next stage, And this kind of an award is even more, I would say, significant because it is looking into aspirations of young architects.
Yeah.
Who really tomorrow are going to shape our towns and cities. So I think that kind of synergy I have not seen in most of the other, I have not seen, they may be. So I look forward to this.
Yeah, last as a closing remark, like your advice to young architects, that is very, very important because we were now talking about young architects. So to remain ethical, climate responsive, rooted to context, but still find it very to sustain a meaningful practice with all these things in picture, in this market-driven system. So what's the best advice you can give to young architects?
I would rarely want to advise.
Yeah,
I won't advise. But let's say if one had to kind of have a conversation, on, because it is, I've asked many elderly architects, I won't name them, many well-practiced elderly practices, large practice, I've asked them this question. If you all were starting practice now as a young architect, very renowned practices.
Yeah.
I've asked, let's say you didn't start in the 60s or 80s and you are starting now.
No.
Can we reimagine what that your practice would have done? Renowned practices. And they say that when they see the challenges of our time now, they are really wondering how much energy the young architects have today to deal with that. And because at 40 years ago, this level of complexity was not there. So let's say 40 years ago, one could do a design for 1 year. Client is waiting. Now the client is saying, can you give me a design in 2 months, 3 months? If they give you time, They may even ask lesser than that.
Yeah.
So these are all challenges that we cannot easily measure. So instead of advice, I would really suggest that a forum like this after the award,
Yeah.
let's say we organized another very informal round table. And in that round table, the questions you raised right now, very important. What are the challenges of our times which are not there? Because otherwise what happens in the academia and all that, the case study is shown of some 1980 building as a case study. But if we are going to dialogue, okay, that was done in 1980, it took 12 years to build that building. And today now you have to design the same building, and what are the condition changes. Then you may find that that case study by itself may or may not be relevant now because the contextual changes so much. So I think more than advice, I am more keen to see, and if you all can bring that up, I have requested IIKLA several times to bring it up, that we have one or two of this round table, very relaxed, informal conversations. And we put, okay, these are the challenges, with no bias, just to watch, observe, not come with already the solution, but let's map what are these challenges, why it is happening. I think that itself as a process, sitting, discussing, will emerge, most probably will emerge very new directions. And so from an award ceremony like this, we may just emerge something which is so responsive to climate, responds to the need of the cities growing. But again, like how I will go back to now, it is coming as a collective, collaborative, conversational process. And then so I won't really attempt to give any advice, because I can see what is the reality on ground. And each time I meet young, why even senior architect meet, and I'm having a conversation, one is learning something new, something one did not imagine, something one, it is, we have moved into that kind of a world, So I think that is where, that's the possibility or promise of tomorrow actually, what I'm looking forward to. Because when they present, I know they will present things we have never imagined before. And that will kind of, but if that can be taken to the next level, with some level of documentation, gathering, conversation, emerging into some other projects, live projects, which are supported by some patrons, I think it can really open into it. Can become a yearly book, of this process.
Correct.
It can generate films, it can generate so many other things. And then invite all the educational institutions to take part in it. Internships can happen through that. I think really then there's a conversation happening, and it can expand, because let's say it was a cultural center, it could be a hospital, it could be, so the conversation of architects and their role in a city, and their inner relevance, what more they can do other than just a project in a plot. I think that is the possibility I am looking forward for tomorrow. And when Sir David Ajay comes, I think he is also keen to look at that. We will really see what are those possibilities, So it is not about, it is really tomorrow entering into some unknown, and listening, seeing, and some new points of view.
Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you.